It was the best day with the best friends in the best city. I was just a couple of blocks off Broadway, seated at a table at 54 Below, and you could not wipe the grin off my face. I had been waiting for months to see one of my favorite performers perform, and he was on that stage singing his heart out about his crippling anxiety, and I could not have felt I belonged in a place anymore. I caught my friend's eyes across the table, and she knew it too. In that moment, everything was right with the world. This was going to be our year. The next morning, I was sad to leave a place that felt like home, but I coped by making plans to return that summer, probably see another show. Later that day in the airport, I caught a glimpse of what would be the first reported death in the U.S. due to COVID. I got through security, I picked up a New York Times, and there I read Gina Belafonte's article, How Panicked Should New Yorkers Be? Needless to say, I didn't go back that summer. 2020 didn't feel like anyone's year, and home, no matter how geographically close, felt like a miserable heartache away. Our stories, though different, are eerily the same from here. We missed birthday celebrations and anniversaries, Easter dinners, Seder meals, and iftar feasts were eaten alone. We've all experienced this monstrous virus and its ruthless ability to tear families apart in more ways than one. But slowly, we learned a new rhythm. For some, a dirge, for others, an off-putting syncopation. But we forced ourselves into new rhythms. Whether we baked hundreds of muffins, or we're at loved ones' bedsides in our minds, or strangers' curbsides as our jobs demanded, we found some solace in our common experiences. Some of us anchored ourselves in new rituals as simple as taking that new rescued dog out every 2 hours, or trying to log the kid into the virtual classroom that didn't work half the time, but still, we tried. My friend Adrian lives in Brooklyn, but he grew up in Romania, and he has a different memory of a lockdown, one that took place during the Romanian Revolution, in the dark and disconnected from the world. So Adrian, in the spring of 2020, got on his rooftop during Pascha, or Orthodox Easter, music in tow, set up a table, and proceeded to dye eggs and dance with abandon. He coaxed his neighbors to their balconies, conducting his neighborhood in a rhythmic call and response of joy, reminding himself that he could go out and feel the sun and bring a little light into other people's lives. It was these innovative gifts that got us through. But even with these moments of levity, even with all those muffins, we face dark days. Now it seems we're doing everything we can to move as quickly and as far away from that time as if it were just a blip. But the truth is, we're all changed. Some of us never had a chance to isolate at all. Our frontline workers, essential personnel, they've trudged through the last 2.5 years, though not unscathed. Others have been like on-again, off-again lovers, back to life as usual, only to be driven away by a new mutation of this deadly virus. The shock and awe cycle has done its damage, and the effects of which are still to be seen, of how we have both individually and collectively chosen to cope. One only has to look at the Great Resignation to see that we are not the same. The question then becomes, what do we do with our new selves and our old lives as they seem to be on this collision course of back to normal. Not even normal, but a hyper normal, double time. Let's make up for the lost time. When we feel off kilter, it's natural for us to look to things that ground us, our rhythms, routines, and traditions. There's just one problem. How did we ever fit it all in? Trying to manage the arrangements, the logistics, the expectations. Is it time to reimagine our traditions too? We were once lulled into the numbing rhythm of daily norms, annual holidays, family traditions, expected events. There's nothing wrong with any of these things, but when these occasions became obligations we thought we couldn't say no to, our calendars looked like a jazz score until a global pandemic broke the rhythm. Then we couldn't go home. Not to a place or a feeling of familiarity. Now, if we want to go home again, we have to decide if we will remain passive participants or venture there might be another way, one where the table is a place to gather as our truest selves. People have been trying to make meaning of the holidays for some time, religious or not, but none so apparent as the birth of Friendsgiving. Friendsgiving searches on the web spike around 2011 in a Bailey's Irish Cream commercial. Yeah, that's right. In an effort to sell a substance that many of us have used to get through the holiday season, they accidentally created an alternative one. I think that could be a sign we have a problem with our traditional gatherings. Similarly, the turn of the calendar year calls for a certain kind of meaning making. And for me, the turn of 2019 into 2020 was no different. Let me tell you a little bit about my New Year's Eve. My close friend wanted to have just a few people over to celebrate. No big deal. But my friend had a new long-distance partner, and that partner was going to bring her best friend. Then there was my partner who was lobbying to be left home alone that night. Add into that the 5 of us combined had 5 children under the age of 7. Sounds like the making of a great New Year's Eve party, right? Oh, it was a Dear Abby letter waiting to happen. But somehow, we gave the kids just enough sugar and timed their crash just right so that we were alone when my always thoughtful friend asked, "What are you grateful for in 2019? What are you glad to see go? What do you hope for in 2020? How can I support you in your dreams?" A New Year's Eve party is not supposed to have a fifth wheel, oven-baked pizza, and minions. The table was still covered in the kids' runaway frosting and jelly beans, and this is where she leads the conversation. I just don't do vulnerability very well. I didn't even know 2 of the other 4 people in the room, but somehow I knew this is what we were supposed to be doing. I felt at ease. I felt at home. I'm so glad she asked those questions around that sticky table, because in the months that followed, we'd only be able to see each other around Zoom squares, but we would need each other. The teacher, the college educator, the minister, the army captain, and the ER doctor. It may have been New Year's Eve when we first gathered, but I understand what the fuss of Friendsgiving is all about. When we set our own tables, we can find our way home. When we set aside the social obligations that keep us spinning in circles with no time to breathe, when we can set aside the expectations of ourselves and others, when we just show up as tired, awkward, or unsure of ourselves as we happen to be, we invite others to do the same. It's going to take some counterintuitive changes to how we think about our tables, though. It's not enough to offer hospitality. Look, I'm from Texas. I'd like to think I know a thing or two about Southern hospitality by proxy. It's really nice. Everything's taken care of. Everyone puts their best foot forward, not their real foot, but their best foot. You're always the guest. You're always the guest. It's why you can have a satisfaction survey in the office or on a college campus, and people will say, yes, I feel welcome here. Oh, no, I don't belong here. You see, hospitality implies that someone else owns the table and allows you to sit at it occasionally. But belonging means you're in the kitchen making the food too. You're getting messy with everyone else. And when it's time, you help set the table and take your seat. I want you to know this really can be done. It means sometimes when I go out to get the mail and I really want to avoid my neighbor because I know it's going to take more than a wave, I just say hello first because I know the conversation's good for both of us. Other times, I don't blow off my 8-year-old when he asks a complicated but intuitive question. I know if I'm going to remain at the table for long, I'm going to have to be curious and humble. When I think about a table that lasts, it's one where it's okay to talk about politics and religion at dinner. We have to talk about the hard stuff, but it's only the hard stuff because we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it because we don't know how to talk about it, but we don't know how to talk about it because we don't talk about it. But what better way to learn than elbow deep in stuffing or with a little sauce in the beard? It's really hard to be mad at your favorite sous chef when you know that this time next month, next week, you're going to do it again because the table isn't going anywhere. When it gets really hard, we have to be okay when people tell us they don't feel like they belong. When our institutions, our organizations, our families are exclusive, we need to ask why. When we feel excluded, we need to say why. Poet David White explains to feel as if you belong is one of the greatest triumphs of human existence. And to say when you don't belong, you're already on the path back. You're already on your way home. We can't keep telling people when we've pushed them to the margins, no, we didn't, or we didn't mean to. That response is as dry as bad turkey. It's time to ask real questions. Give real answers. We can start with, what do you need to feel that you belong here? Tell each other, I love you. I got you. Come set this table with me. Bring your favorite dish to share, but don't even think you're getting out of doing the dishes. When we can set this table together, then we're finally home.